Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another What's for Dinner video. I believe I have 4 recipes to share with you in today's video and they're all really good. They're very quick and easy meals to put together. I've kind of been on a roll with that. Actually, I think 2 of them were nights that my ankle was really bothering me. I'm not sure what happened, but I had sprained it or something and was having a hard time putting weight on it, and I was like, you know, my husband would have gladly picked up some food, but he doesn't really cook, which is fine because I love cooking. And I was like, I think I can do it. I just need to do something that I don't have to be on my feet for very long. So I kept that in mind for at least 2 of those recipes. I don't totally remember, but let's get into the first recipe. I hope you enjoy these. Okay guys, so we've got another easy skillet meal. I'm heating up in the skillet pan about a tablespoon of olive oil, and then I am throwing in some diced onion. The recipe calls for 1 small onion. I think I had a jumbo onion that day, so I didn't quite do a whole onion, and then we're going to take this kielbasa, sausage, whatever you call it, and I slice it up. I slice it up and then halve the slices, just because we prefer it that way. And we are just going to cook that. The sausage is completely cooked, so we're just getting some color on the sausage and cooking that onion to translucent. And then at this point you're supposed to throw in some garlic cloves. I forget, you see I do it a little bit later. Now I'm deviating from the recipe, surprise, surprise, but I'll have the original one below. I put in a can of diced tomatoes with green chilies and about, I think that was 4 cups of egg noodles. There's my garlic. Now the recipe calls for something totally different. It calls for fire roasted tomatoes. I just didn't have that. And some shortcut pasta. So again, I'm completely varying. And then the recipe calls for 1.5 cups of chicken stock and 1/2 cup of milk, which is what I've got in that measuring cup there. And we are just going to try to get the noodles submerged. You don't need to stir it, but I felt like there wasn't enough liquid, so I put in some more chicken broth, but then later that seemed to have been a problem, so I would just stick to the ratios on the recipe. I don't think I needed as many noodles, to be perfectly honest, but whatever. You're just going to do that and cook that for a few minutes. I would just go by whatever pasta you use. The recipe said 7 to 10 minutes, but the recipe said 10 to 12 minutes, but I would just go based on however long it takes your noodles to cook. So here I'm like, there's a lot of liquid. I was gonna let it try to cook with the lid off and see if some of it would evaporate. So I'm adding in some cheese here. The recipe called for, I think, 2 cups of cheese, 1 cup of cheese. I say 2 cups because I would have loved 2 cups. I like cheese. And we're just mixing that in here. I just did a little bit at a time. My pan was full. I actually was going to try to add the broccoli in here to cook it. And I've said this a lot of times. I want a bigger skillet because I love putting everything in the same pan. But as you can see, I'm steaming it in a different pan. So this is not in the recipe, but I just felt like there was too much liquid, and I didn't want to just get rid of it because there's lots of flavor there. Obviously, I just added in the cheese and all of the other stuff. So I just pulled out some of the liquid, and I'm going to whisk in. I tried using this spoon. Whisk in some flour to thicken it up, and then add it back in just to kind of make it a little bit more, I don't know, thick and creamy. It all worked good. It tasted good. It's just not the recipe. But I will have the original recipe linked below. So now I'm adding this into the pan, and we're just going to combine that really well. And then we served, like I said, I served this up with some steamed broccoli, and this dinner ended up being really good. Oh yeah, a little bit more cheese on top. I think I ended up just adding whatever I had shredded. I had guesstimated how much, so, you know, I've said before, and I'll say it again, cheese and chocolate chips don't need to be measured in recipes. So there it was. This was a really quick, easy 1-pan meal, or 1 skillet meal. Well, except for the broccoli, but, you know, do what you want. All right, guys, so for tonight's dinner, we're going to start off by making some biscuits. They are cheddar drop biscuits. I saw this recipe on Adeline's channel. She has a few channels, but this one was her Adeline's Kitchen channel. I believe these are keto, but don't quote me on that because I'm not keto, but she does a lot of keto recipes, and these do use almond flour, and they looked really easy, so we're gonna give it a shot. So I have 4 eggs to start off with. We're gonna add in 1.5 cups of almond flour. 1.5 cups of shredded cheese. Kind of roughly measuring the cheese. Cheese is like chocolate, it doesn't totally need to be measured. So I'm gonna do, I eyeballed what I had shredded up, and apparently I was pretty right on for that. And now we're gonna add in about 1 teaspoon of onion powder. 2 teaspoons of baking powder. I'm gonna measure that one. Some things should be measured. I've got 2 teaspoons of melted butter. And I think that's it. We've got eggs, cheddar, almond powder. All right, we're gonna mix this together. And it says to drop on a lined cooking sheet, or what does it say, greased, whatever. I'm using one of these with the silicone mats, and I'm just gonna use this 3 tablespoon, it's either cookie scoop or, I don't think it's yeah, it's a cookie scoop. I hope these aren't too big. I don't remember what size she did, but we're gonna give them a little space between each other, but I don't really wanna do 2 pans worth. We're gonna fit these all on here, I think. Okay, now the recipe says to put it in the oven at 450 for 12 minutes. So we're gonna do these first because the rest of our food for dinner needs to be at 350. So we're gonna do these, now. Well, here are the biscuits out of the oven, and they look really good. So I'm excited about these. Let's get on to the actual dinner part of the meal. So we're gonna make some mini meatloaves, and I thought about just using my regular recipe and just putting them into minis, but I decided to try this new recipe, which I am adjusting a little bit because the recipe calls for 1.5 pounds of ground beef, and I'm just using 1 pound. But I will have the original recipe linked below as usual. So I'm gonna read the recipe as is, and then I try to do a little bit less of some of these things. So 1.5 pounds of ground beef, 2/3 cup of panko breadcrumbs, 1/2 cup of onion chopped, which I didn't want to do, so this is where I'm adding in some onion powder. I just didn't feel like chopping onion this night. 1 tablespoon of barbecue sauce, 1 tablespoon of mustard, 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1.5 teaspoons of chili powder, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and then you would also add in some ground pepper, which I don't like to cook with ground pepper. If you're new, I don't care for it, so I never cook with it, but yeah, and then 1 egg lightly beaten, and I just poured in most of it. I didn't want to do all of it and have it be too much. And then I'm adding this in. This is not in the recipe. I am using some of these bacon pieces. I had them in the fridge. The package was open, and they needed to be used, and it was really good. So it was a good variant. So I'm just mixing it all together. I do like to use gloves because squishing meat between my fingers feels gross to me when it's raw, and I don't like picking it out of my nails. So I greased my muffin tin, and I'm just trying to evenly distribute it and then just pushing it down a little bit, kind of flattening it out. And yeah, there we have that. And we are going to bake these in the oven at 350 degrees for 15 minutes. And while that is going, you see the biscuits, those were, oh my goodness. Yeah, we'll get to those. Those biscuits are really good, guys. Those are really good. Definitely check that out. I will have Adeline's video linked for you. So now, while the meatloaf is in the oven, we are making up some sauce, and this one is a little different than what I normally do, but not much. It's 1/3 cup of light brown sugar, 1/2 cup of ketchup, 2 teaspoons of Dijon mustard. I'm using regular because I had finished up the Dijon mustard I had on hand in the meatloaf recipe itself, and then 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg. So that's kind of the different ingredient here from what I'm used to, but it was really good. So after 15 minutes in the oven, I pulled the meatloaf out, and I'm just trying to soak up any grease. That's what it said to do, so I'm doing that. And then I'm spooning a little bit of the sauce on these, and then we're gonna put it back in the oven for another 10 to 15 minutes until your meatloaf is fully cooked. And the little meatloaf things, I like that. I feel like they don't take as long, and they were really good. So now I'm just steaming up some green beans. Nothing magical here, just poured in some frozen green beans, a little bit of water, and threw them on the stove to steam while the meatloaf finished. And then I thought it'd be nice to have a little bit of sauce left over for dipping, so I'm just making it up. This was like This recipe and this video, I feel like I used up a lot of ingredients. So I was like trying to get the last of the ketchup out. I hate wasting stuff, so I worked pretty hard on that one. Anyways, I did everything again, but a little bit of a nutmeg. And there is everything. I cooked up a couple potatoes in the microwave. I prefer it in the oven or crock pot, but it was a quick night. So here was, this dinner was really, really good. Okay, so we have got another skillet meal here. I'm using some apple chicken sausage from Aldi. I'm heating up some avocado oil in the pan, and I'm going to slice up this chicken sausage. I will say from the beginning, I think we've determined, especially my husband, but I was kind of unsure about it, that he doesn't care for this particular sausage. So the recipe overall was really good. We just are not a huge fan of this sausage. I wish I don't know, I bought it a few times and I was like, you should have told me, because I was kind of like on the fence about it, and apparently he's not a huge fan. So, but the recipe itself was pretty good. So we're going to cook that up, and then I'm also, the recipe called for 1 small yellow onion. I'm just doing, this was another part of a big onion, and I'm just doing a little bit of it. I didn't feel like chopping up too much. So anyways, also I'll say this recipe, I'm not following exactly, it calls to cook with like ghee, and I don't have that, and I just don't let stuff like that bother me when I'm looking at recipes. I just, you know, overall it sounded good, and I had most of the stuff. So I'm just cooking up that sausage until it gets a little bit browned on each side, and while that's going, we're chopping up the onion, and then we're going to chop up the potatoes as well. I am kind of roughly peeling them. Do it however you want, and then I am chopping them up in small pieces to try to help them make sure they're cooking really quickly. Once the sausage is cooked, you're just going to remove that from the pan, and then you're going to toss in the potatoes and onions. And now the recipe says that you should add in some ghee. I don't have ghee, so I just threw in some butter, the onions, and potatoes, and we are going to cook these until everything is cooked. Now I was a little bit concerned about all of that coloring at the bottom with the sausage. I know that it's like good flavor and all that, but I was afraid that the potatoes were going to stick and burn, because I've had that trouble before, but I'm like, I'm just going to go with the recipe and try to stick to it. So I'm seasoning with some salt, some garlic powder, some paprika, and some crushed red pepper flakes. Now I do add in a little bit more butter here, because like I said, I was like, I don't know, I was just concerned that there was going to be issues, but it all worked out just fine. So you're going to, there I just added in some garlic, and we got those nice and cooked. Then the recipe calls for coconut aminos. You could use soy sauce if you want, but 3 tablespoons of coconut aminos. And when I added that in, that's when I was able to scrape up all of the bottom bits and pieces and stuff, so it worked out great. And then you're going to add in some broccoli. I think the recipe called for fresh broccoli, but I put in some frozen. And I'm just seasoning once again, even though the recipe I think said to put in half the seasoning earlier, but then it didn't say when to put in the rest of it, if I remember correctly. So that's when I did it. And then I'm just pulling out the broccoli, because I say this all the time, my frozen broccoli comes in giant chunks of broccoli. So I just pulled them out, cut them up a little bit, and tossed everything back in. By the way, guys, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, because that really helps me out. I would appreciate that. Yeah, so then we added the chicken sausage back in once everything was cooked, tossed it together, quick, easy, and 1 skillet, and this was really, really good. So I decided to leave this little clip in here, just so you can see my husband behind me. This is how we do it in our house. He's getting ready for a church service, and so he has his guitar out, and I get to listen to that while I cook. It's fantastic. So for this dinner, we're starting by lining a baking sheet with aluminum foil, and then you're going to put a little rack on top. I just have my cookie cooling racks, and it works just fine. And I did spray that really good. And then I've just got a package of bone-in thighs and chicken legs. If you don't like to use paper towels, don't hate me for the massive amounts of them. I should have just put on gloves. But you are supposed to pat the chicken dry. I just used a few extra paper towels because raw meat grosses me out. So I am just patting them dry and throwing them in a bowl. And this ended up not being very much. I should have taken out 2 packages, but it's all right. It's just 2 of us. We didn't starve. And I drizzled over some olive oil. We're going to add on some seasoning here and bake these in the oven. So I've got onion powder and some garlic powder, some salt. And let's see, what else? I do not have a recipe for this one. Oh yeah, Italian seasoning. I did reference a couple things for cooking because, oh, crushed red pepper flakes. I did reference some recipes just because I wanted to make sure I got the chicken right. I'm just going to toss this around. I feel like I never like how my bone-in chicken tastes when I'm doing more seasoning, because why not? When I do like thighs and legs, but it's a very inexpensive cut of meat and I like to get organic, and so that's expensive. So this is like my go-to for chicken. So I decided to try something different, and I will say I feel like this makes my oven messier, which is why I hate cooking stuff like this, but it was so worth it. I will do this again. So we put the chicken on the rack, and then I just poured on a little bit of barbecue sauce and spread that out. And we are going to pop this in the oven. I believe I did it at 425. Now I've got some rice, and I used chicken broth and beef broth to cook it. My measuring cup was wet in the beginning. That's why the rice stuck to the bottom. I don't really care about this stuff. I just needed to use up what was in my fridge, so using beef and chicken broth just didn't bother me. So that's what I did. You can also just use water. And I'm seasoning it with this herbamare. I don't always do this, but I was keeping my sides very simple today, so I decided to just season everything in their pans. And then we're steaming up some green beans, kind of one of our go-tos. We do like a lot of veggies, so I tried to make a decent amount. And I thought I had a little bit more chicken broth than that left, so that's what I was going to use to steam it in, but I had to throw in some water as well. And we're just steaming that, cooking the rice. And then once the green beans were done, I just drained them, put in a little bit of butter and some more of that herbamare. Like I said, we normally just kind of season it on our own per serving, but since everything else is kind of on the, lamer side with my sides, I decided to doctor them up a little bit. So I think I let the chicken cook for about 35 minutes. I don't totally remember, but I just checked it with a meat thermometer to make sure they were fully cooked. And then I put on a little bit more barbecue sauce, and then I put them under the broiler for just a couple of minutes, and these came out really good, and I was excited because I never like how my chicken comes out like this. Like I like when I do all other kinds of chicken, but the bone in, like chicken thighs and chicken legs, I never like them. These came out so good. I will definitely do it this way again in the future. So once my rice was done, I just stirred in a little bit of butter, and there you have it. This chicken was amazing. Like I said, I think this method of cooking was the key for me anyway to getting a really good chicken. Well guys, that's going to do it for today's video. If you liked it, please remember to give it a thumbs up before you leave, and subscribe if you are new so you don't miss out on my future videos. And I will see you in the next one. Bye guys.